All right, here we go. Overdrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. What a glorious, glorious afternoon it is. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill. There's Frankie Corrado. How are we feeling this afternoon?
Not as good as you last night. Not as good as you last night. You were Joe from the Bridging It. You were super fanning it. And you said you guys are not that good. And this is our sport. And this is our country.
That's
Forget
right.
about Paul Bissonnette's video. The Bryan Hayes tweet, it resonated.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I think someone had to come over the top because I had heard enough. I had heard enough about the Americans. They've arrived. It's their game now, and they're going to take it over. And what did I say leading up to the game? They never win those games. Never. They won the 96 World Cup. That's it. 30 years ago. Canada always wins. They found a way to win last night. I was nervous at times. I was nervous, but I'm not going to forget that game anytime soon, man. That was a blast.
Put it in the vault, man. What is it? Classics? The ESPN Classics?
Yep. Oh, I'd rewatch that in 20 years. Every shift of it.
Yeah.
Every year for the rest of my life. I'd sit there and say, pop that game in because it was a great
65 years old, retired, brown liquor out, and just pop the game in and have a great time.
Yep.
Porch cigar, bring a little portable TV out front, porch cigar, brown liquor, and relive the glory days of Connor McDavid getting his international career in full flight at the men's level.
In Florida, while you're in Florida with no shirt on and just love life and say, that's my country and that's how we play hockey. And then look over at your neighbor and give him the bird. Say, you like that? Look at McDavid.
Yeah.
Look at McDavid.
What do you think of that? Connor McDavid shows up last night. And
dude, I told you yesterday, I really think that this is an avenue for Connor McDavid. And let's be honest, did not have his A-plus stuff yesterday, did he?
Not even close.
Dude, not even
60
close.
minutes, it was setting up. If the Americans win in overtime last night, the whole story is where was McDavid?
Yes.
The whole story is what happened to the guy, where was he, and why didn't he show up? And now it's the complete opposite. He wins MVP of the game, which he wasn't the best player in the game, but he obviously factored in the most important
He won
moment.
the game. Of course he's the MVP of the game.
I guess so.
But it wasn't his
Binnington
body
was the
of
MVP.
work.
You could have made
Binnington was the MVP.
compelling
Let's
argument for
clarify
Binnington.
Binnington
That game is over 4 or 5 times over if Binnington doesn't have the game that he had.
Binnington was the MVP, but I understand why you give it to McDavid. Of course. I mean, he scored the goal. He's the face of the league, best player. That's his moment. It was incredible. It was an incredible experience as well because, we obviously follow the Leafs and we track the Leafs as closely as we do. The fact that it was in Boston made it just feel different and weird, yet there was a lot of deja vu and a lot of nostalgia. Like, I'm sure we all had the same experience going into overtime. It's like you're waiting for another overtime in that barn.
Yeah.
And
you were waiting for Zdeno Chara to skate out with a USA jersey and just score somehow.
Yep.
Or Patrice Bergeron. I'll tell you a couple other things. You mentioned Binnington, and he made the coach look like a genius last night because he kept saying, this guy in the big moments, he's kept us in there. And there's also the idea that they didn't trust anybody else to make a change, but you got to give the guy a ton of credit. To be that composed, like the third period and overtime, there was some grade A chances where it was like the Canadians looked tired and they looked to loosen up and given up some opportunities like these ones here, and it should have been game over.
Yep.
But this guy made the incredible saves. And I also give Jon Cooper a ton of credit. To handle that group is not easy business, and being in Montreal and seeing the pressers and seeing him walk around, seeing him practice, run the practice, deal with players, that guy's a real deal Holyfield coach, man. I'm telling you, you got to see it like close up just to see the whole package, like how he operates at practice, dealing with the media, how to deliver messages, how to send. Like it's just, and I'm not just saying this because I know the guy. But he's a real deal coach. How he handled Binnington and how he handled, like Mark Stone deserved to be bumped down last night, and he just looked and said, "You're not going to bump you down," and Mitch Marner, you're going up. You made a great play in the second period, or in the first period, whatever it was to tie the
Bennett
game.
goal in the second period.
The Bennett goal,
The
you
Bennett
know what's crazy
goal.
about that? Is that there are some coaches that would have said, I tried Marner with McDavid already, and I'm just crossing it off my list, and I'm just not going back to it. He said, no, this guy's going tonight. I'm going to put him back with McDavid because I thought it was going to work the first time. It didn't work, but I'm going to try it again because I believe it, and that's just a gut feel. That's a coach's gut thing. The Binnington thing, going to him, sticking with him, never deviating from that, coach's gut. Same thing last night with Marner, putting him back with McDavid. That is an elite coach's gut, if you want to call it anything.
Yeah,
I was going to say that. You just stole my thunder and finished my thought for me, but I
hammered you over the top.
Sorry.
Is what he did.
It was an elbow off the top turnbuckle, and I'm going to take control of this comment, and he did. I love it.
You know what's coming is we're going to post this on YouTube, and it'll say, like, Corrado, Cooper, genius, and it's going to go viral. It's going to be Frankie's.
Dude, I'll tell you right now, if the online people do that, they're getting an email tonight. Like,
I think it should be a duo. I think it should be O'Neill and Corrado agreed. Jon Cooper knows what he's doing. That's what we need. That's clickbaity enough.
But dude, what a night for Mitch Marner as well, Hazy.
Unbelievable.
He sets up two of the goals, and I thought we're doing a segment, I believe, today called Lock or Not.
We are.
He vaulted himself potentially on our segment, which means nothing, to possibly going from not a lock. He skyrocketed to one of the top locks for next February.
Absolutely.
You talk about just contributions, and you can go through other guys, and it's not about comparing Mitch Marner to other guys, but he scored an overtime winner. He disappeared a little bit, but Cooper hung with him and kept him kind of bebopping around the lineup. And then when it counted the most, he had 2 massive assists and the most important assist in the whole tournament. He vaulted to a lock, and I'm really happy for him, and he should be proud of himself the way he contributed last night. That's what he's always expected to do. Everyone knows he can contribute offensively. It's when chips are down. Where are you? Can you do it? He did it last night. It's a stepping stone.
Absolutely. And I was really happy for him, too. I thought he was phenomenal. All game, I thought he was. And, I guess a couple of defensive breakdowns at points in the first period, but I thought he looked very comfortable with the puck. And what I always find fascinating, and this has been ongoing with Leaf fans forever, and I get it because of the nature of the sport, the nature of a game like that where it's tight checking and you got to get inside, and people revere, in this town forever, the Darcy Tuckers and the Gary Roberts and the guys that go in first on the forecheck and throw hits and go to the net and score goals with their teeth. That's not Mitch. Like, that's never going to be Mitch Marner. No. So if you're expecting that, then you're always going to be disappointed with him. Why he hasn't worked in big games is because what he does so well, he wasn't doing so well, which is create time and space for himself and his teammates better than maybe anyone else. And his IQ is as high as anybody in the sport. And his ability to read the play and make the opposition feel uncomfortable, whether they have the puck, don't have the puck, that's his strength. And for whatever reason, big games of the past with the Leafs, he just hasn't been able to do it. And then it looks worse because he's also not going to crash the net. He's not going to throw a hit. Not going to be in the middle of a scrum. Why it popped last night was because he looked comfortable and he did what he's capable of doing. And the pass to Bennett was brilliant. That's Mitch Marner in a nutshell. Slow the puck down, slow the play down at the blue line, create time and space. He cuts to the middle. Bennett scores the way he scores, which is huge. And then obviously the read with McDavid, that's not an easy play, man. That's a high-leverage play where he had to, like, Matthews was in between, and Matthews got his stick out, and he kind of went out and around Matthews' stick to make sure that McDavid could get the pass. And I thought he was brilliant. I thought Marner was unreal last night, and he needed that.
I'll piggyback off your commentary there. The one thing that he hasn't been able to do in the playoffs or in a particular series is make an adjustment. Because we know how he can make plays, and you said he wants to buy time and let guys get open. When that shrinks up, he hasn't been able to adjust.
Right.
And say, because it's not like he's going to switch up his game plan and start, as you mentioned off the top, that really got me fired up, score goals with his teeth.
Yes.
Whoa!
I love those guys.
He's never going to do that, but he has to find the ability to adjust and say, this game's going faster, how can I contribute offensively? Because I make a ton of money, and that's what I'm paid to do.
And I can do it.
That's what you always got to do.
Exactly. That's the
coach isn't going to go outside of the boundaries and say, hey, man, go and knock Brady Tkachuk on his ass and then start a line brawl. That's not what you do, man. Everyone gets paid for a specific reason. And under the circumstances, you have to find a way to do that. Look at Kyle Connor, man. That guy's going to score 50 goals this year. He could leap into some Hart Trophy conversations. Didn't play last night.
Yeah, that was insane. That was crazy. Why would you want to go into a game like that where you need all the potential ammo that you can have and go in shorthanded like that?
The coach didn't like what he saw, and he didn't trust them. He didn't trust them to perform, and he thought he might be potentially a weak link in the most important, critical times of the game.
I guess.
The other guy they put in was a big body. He scored the game before that, and he's an energy guy, and he's just built differently. Yeah. And in a short tournament, you can lose trust quickly.
Yeah, they doubled down, tripled down, right? No Tage Thompson on the team, he scored a ton. No Caulfield on the team, he scored a ton. Kyle Connor scores more than anyone on that team. You're not playing. Like, they tripled down on their philosophy.
Does USA Hockey deserve some criticism, saying you had some game breakers sitting around?
They do deserve some criticism for that.
I think so. And it feels like the Canadians at the World Juniors here. It's funny how that's flipped, right? Where it was like, well, why didn't you bring these guys who are game breakers? You wanted different players. But I would counter that with, and I do think, at times we can be victims of the moment and prisoners of the moment, where you get stuck in it and you yell and scream about anything that happened that specific game. The other side of that was Sam Bennett last night, where there were a lot of people in hockey saying, you can't put Sam Bennett on this team. You can't have Sam Bennett out there. He can't dangle. He can't do what other guys can do. And last night, I thought he was as good as anybody on the ice, quite frankly, last night. What did he have, 7 shots on net? He scored an unbelievable goal, threw his body around. And that's the dangerous kind of element of these conversations, where you got to have a middle ground. Yes, you want the Kyle Connors, you want the Cole Caulfields, you want different players like that, but you also got to consider the Sam Bennetts, because they're big game players. They're guys that are going to factor in to a game like last night, where if it's a skills competition, Sam Bennett's not one of the 13 best Canadian forwards.
No, I get that.
But if anybody's watching the Stanley Cup playoffs last year and what he did for the Florida Panthers,
you're like, you got to have him on the team.
Yeah. And you don't think the coach had a heavy kind of influence on who was being selected?
I'm not saying it wasn't the right call. It was clearly the right call.
I'm just saying Jon Cooper, cross-state rivals, watches Sam Bennett a lot, and he probably just said to Army and the staff, got to get this guy on.
Have to have him on.
He's a gamer, he's a killer, and he could potentially score a massive goal.
Didn't play the first game of the tourney either. And the first shift
he
had,
was not even close. He wasn't even close to coming out of the lineup after his well was inserted.
Two guys that didn't play the first game of this tournament, Sam Bennett and Thomas Harley. I thought both those guys were unbelievable. Unreal. That kid Harley, for him to step in and on that McKinnon goal say, I'm actually going to make this pass and I'm going to nosedive into the zone, not playing cautious, opening up that space for McKinnon. Like, I think that just speaks a lot about the confidence of that kid. And, going with the American side, okay, Auston Matthews is about 6 inches from having the game of his career. If he scores one of those shots that goes 6 inches under the bar or over Binnington's glove or over Binnington's blocker, we're talking about that guy was a physical, dominant force. He outmuscled McCarr on the one goal. He outmuscled Crosby on the one goal, and then he just couldn't get that one for himself to finish things off.
He was one goal away from becoming Mike Urizioni 2025.
Yes, he was a beast. He was 6 inches away from exactly that. Eruzione 25.
Yeah, it's. I'm glad you brought him up in this first segment, because I think that's a big topic of discussion, because I don't think any athlete wants people to feel sorry for them. No grown adult ever wants to hear that. But I felt for him last night. I felt for Matthews, because I thought he was outstanding. I thought he was the Americans' best forward. He primary assist on the 2 goals. And you mentioned the 3 chances he had in overtime. He had 2 grade A chances and a grade A+++ chance. That Gensel pass, cross ice, where Binnington goes across. And now that lives forever. That's one of the great Canadian saves of all time. That Binnington save on Matthews to save the game will be played for eternity, for the rest of his life, for the rest of Auston Matthews' life and Binnington's life and our lives. And you're absolutely right, Frankie, because now he's 0-7 in his career in must-win games. This is different than the NHL, but it's a big game, 0-7. He's 0-4 in that building, 18, 19, 24, 25. And if he scores that goal, it's Captain America, and he is an icon in that country. Like, he's on every ESPN show, Fox Sports. He's on the front page of Time magazine. It would have been so big for his career and his life. And it would have been, look what he did, 3 points, the game winner, place goes nuts. And instead, Binnington just robs him because he got those shots off, man. All 3 of them. The one he went top shelf, like he got something on that. And I would say the one that went low blocker, that was an unbelievable save by Binnington. Yep. Like he got that off from the hash marks. And now you look at Matthews, and you just have to ask yourself, like, what does this guy have to do? Like, can he show up in the biggest moments? Is he the most snake-bitten superstar of all time? Like, I don't even know what else to say about this guy because I thought he was great. And then to add insult to injury,
it's his guy in overtime.
The lasting image of the tournament is his guy, Connor McDavid, wide open in the slot to win the thing. And I'd go one more dash on top of that in terms of insult. The guy he chased into the corner, Mitch Marner. His boy Mitch Marner drew him into the corner and went around him, and McDavid closes it. And the lasting image could have been, to your point, Frankie, Captain America, he's done it, he's a winner, he's clutch. Instead, that's his guy and he can't do it. And I really felt for him last night because I thought he was great.
And you mentioned he might be one of the most snake-bitten superstars, but as soon as they tied it up, and I had this feeling, it's almost like it was like a Tiger Woods feeling, how he always made the putt where you're like, is this guy really going to do this? And then you're like, as soon as he makes it, you're like, of course he's going to do it. I kind of had that feeling with the likes of Sid and Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon on the same team. I'm like, these guys aren't losing. They're just not losing. And as soon as McDavid won the game, and I'll always remember this conversation, and Hayes, I probably told you this numerous times. I was driving in my car when I was a kid, and my dad had sports radio on, and I remember asking him about the Edmonton Oilers. They're winning the Stanley Cup a lot. And he's like, when you got the best player in the world, you're always going to have an extremely good chance to win. And it just seems like Sid and Mario, like Gretzky, and then now McDavid. It's like it's. We talked about X factors yesterday. Who can contribute? When you have the best players in the world, and it's probably the top 2 with McKinnon and McDavid on the same team, and then you've got the incredible kind of spirit of Sidney Crosby, who is still so talented. It's almost like you can't beat it.
I think it's a great point, and I think it's ultimately what separates Canada from the United States and what will continue to separate them, because everything you just said, you look over, best on best. Canada Cup started in 76. Frankie, you're younger than us, but I'm sure your parents talked about this. Oh, you would have heard from your dad. Bobby Orr in 76. You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe what Bobby Orr looked like in 76. Best player, Canadian. They went in 84, 87, 91, Gretzky. 02, Lemieux. 10 and 14, Sid. 25, McDavid. The best players, always Canadian. And it's always a game breaker, and they always factor in. Always factor in. And that's why when we were having these conversations, and it's not to take anything away from the Americans. They're a great team. They're a great, great program. Great program. We're having fun with the rivalry, and it's a great rivalry. It's only going to grow, and I can't wait for more of this. But why I never bought into the Americans being better is that they don't have the best player. They never have. And guess what? I'm not sure they ever will. Maybe they will at some point. They're not going to next year. McDavid's going to be in Italy, and so will McKinnon, and so will Cale Makar.
Well, I think this generation still belongs to Canada. This generation
that's
still
exactly right. And Matthew Tkachuk came out and said, "We think it's our time now, and we're going to start a golden era of USA hockey." Well, no, you're not, because those guys last night, you start messing around with those guys, McKinnon and McDavid and McDowell. We haven't even talked about Makar.
Exactly.
That guy's out there half a game. See how good that guy is on the blue line?
How about Drew Doughty last night, too? I thought Doughty was
Drew
just
Doughty
no
was
pulse.
really good. But think about this.
Drew Doughty, we're taking him off of
defensemen.
Like he's a lock. Drew Doughty's a lock to go to Italy.
Drew Doughty is the biggest beauty in Canadian hockey.
He's such a gamer. He's such a gamer. And they were missing they were missing Petro, they were missing Morrissey, and they were missing Theodore. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those guys on that blue line really stepped up. I understand the Americans were missing McAvoy and Matthew Tkachuk didn't play. That's all very valid. But to miss 3 of your top I call it 4 or 5 defensemen in the country. That is very significant. And Canada overcame that, and guys stepped up. I just wanted to say one thing on the McDavid thing before we move off it. He just had a Game 7 in the spring where I think a lot of us talked about that and said, this is it. Like, this is stuff that cements your legacy. Game 7, Stanley Cup final. McDavid's going to have the night where he scores the big one or he has the big night. It didn't happen for him. The Panthers won. I don't even think he got a point in that game. And if last night he doesn't score that overtime winner, that's 2. Like, that's 2 in a do-or-die with the championship on the line.
It would be our opening comment.
Right?
Yep.
And he got it done. And that is massive for him. Like, that is, starting to etch his legacy as a winner, and he starts it on, best on best 4 nations.
Yeah, it was just an incredible night, incredible game. There was a lot of Canadians there, obviously the crowd, and again, if you've been watching the Leafs play in that building forever, it was a completely different vibe watching all the local Boston fans funnel out of there, right, and just say, we're out, like, this is it. But it was an incredible night, and in the end, it's Canada still on top, and the Americans are still chasing, and it's gonna come up quickly though, right? We're a year away from the Olympic Games, and we will do lock or no lock in terms of this roster. We'll throw in a couple other names, a couple of guys who were maybe on the bubble or injured, right? Maybe throw in a couple of other guys.
Dude,
we'll
Drew Doughty, welcome to the team in Italy. Welcome to the club.
Yep.
You made the club last night.
That's right. We're welcoming people to the Olympic Games. Personally,
yes. I'll save that for you. As soon as they've made the club, Hazy, you say, welcome to the team in Italy.
Okay.
Buongiorno.
Yeah. I love it. Buongiorno. And it's a 3-man panel here, right? 3 judges, and you got to get two or 3 votes to be welcome to the club. You got to get 2 of 3.
I love it.
To be on the team. So we'll do that a little bit later on. We got Bob McKenzie coming on. Bobby Mack, we haven't heard from him. When you think international hockey, Canada, you think of Bob. Like, he's done it all. He's seen it all. He's covered it all. And now I think he can just be a fan watching the game last night. That's
they call him Bob Father for a reason. He'll dig something up from the '84 Canada Cup that will just it will fire you up.
It'll change the YouTube algorithms. We'll be off, and it'll be Bob's '84 anecdote. Yeah. That's what's going to take over this first hour of Overdrive. So Bob McKenzie coming up. We got MJ, who was in the building last night. Dear Hazy B coming up later this afternoon. We're, again, continuing to chat about what happened last night, how great that game was, what it sets up for the future of both programs. And the Leafs are back in action tomorrow. The Raptors are back in action tonight. So there's a lot going on in the sports world. We'll continue to touch on all of it. Frankie Corrado's in here with the O-Dog Jeff O'Neill. I'm Bryan Hayes. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. We've got Bruce Cassidy coming up now. Bruce will join us just after 6. He was on the bench for Canada last night. And Bob McKenzie coming up here in a few moments. Curtis tweeting in, very good question. Curious how you guys would respond to this. Curtis wondering if Kyle Connor, who was scratched last night, would have been shooting daggers at Matthew Tkachuk for taking a spot in the lineup to sit on the bench basically all night and not play.
It's a fascinating question, because if it's one of those things where you're just morphing into hero mode, saying at all costs I'm going in there, but in reality you kind of knew you had no shot, then that's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's kind of how I read.
Probably, if you can read between the lines, it seems like that would have been what happened, right? Like, I'm going to be here no matter what.
I'd never judge people's injuries.
I know.
And with modern medicine, who knows? Somebody could have said. And the reason I say that I'm not really buying into that is because I believe he practiced the day before.
Well, and he did start the game and play. He got halfway through the second and couldn't go. Just like the Canadian game on Saturday night. And it's like, I don't think the Tkachuk brothers, though, were going to take themselves out of that spotlight. Yeah. It was their moment. They were talking the most. They were the ones saying, we're going to do this and do that.
Dude, forget about Kyle Connor. What about Bill Zito?
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Well, how pissed are the Bruins, man? Like Charlie McAvoy. These guys are in a playoff hunt. They're not going to have Charlie McAvoy. Good luck. And they just spent so much time without him.
Yeah. He's been hurt all year, basically.
Yeah.
And goes there, gets injured. You're right. I mean, Tkachuk now goes down to Florida. Florida's in a good spot, clearly. but what's his status going to be moving forward? And that's going to apply to every team. It's like tomorrow afternoon, there's a game at 12:30. I think Minnesota's playing Detroit tomorrow at 12:30 in the afternoon. There's a game. And Edmonton plays in Philly at 1 o'clock. McDavid's out there tomorrow. Like this time tomorrow, the game's over. He's off the ice.
These guys are going to be playing in warp speed.
Yeah.
Like the guys that were just playing this Four Nations, they're going to be out there saying like this. These guys are in slow motion, and I am flying around the ice.
Yeah, you'd be a little bit like, I've had some games, not a lot, where I would say to Ronnie Francis, I need things teed up rather nicely this evening. Like perfect one-timers in this. I need basically an empty netter to get cooking here.
Yeah.
And he would always deliver. Some of these guys are going to be like 12:30 start.
Yeah, come on, man. Like that's
after
it.
Four Nations face-off and half you guys stink. You want to talk about looking at rosters going through hockey games, man. I hope you enjoyed the last 10 days because I talked about the league being watered down for about a year now. Watch it. Just take a look.
Oh, that's it, man. Like you're going to get like
8,
Dylan
10
Larkin,
guys on every team. No business being in that league.
Larkin's going back. Brock Faber. They're going to play each other tomorrow and be like, what is going on around here? Look at who's like the fourth line. They're going to get out there on the fourth line and be like, we just had McDavid. We were chasing McKinnon around 36 hours ago.
Imagine throwing your industry standard fourth liner into that game last night and just dropping them in and saying, let's see what you got.
It would
like
be
it would stick out. It's like
great
a sore
experiment.
thumb.
Just put the average fourth liner right in the middle of that game. And just to see how he sticks out and how quickly it sticks out. All right, Mike Johnson coming up. Bruce Cassidy will join us. Dear Hazy V later this afternoon. But we have the luxury of a good friend joining us today because, you and I were talking earlier. We're like, we got to call Bob. Like, you got to see if Bob's willing to come on because he's done it all. He's seen it all. He's been to all these events, and last night he got a chance to just watch it, I guess, as a fan. Here he is, the hockey outsider, Bob McKenzie. Bobby Mack, what was that like last night watching that game?
Hello, gentlemen. Nice to talk to you. Yeah, you know what? It was a lot of fun because you're right. I did watch it as a fan. I think it's got to be probably the first major international event, like not Olympics or Olympics, World Cup, whatever, that I haven't been working for. So it was a unique perspective, and it allowed me just to be a fan. And that's different for me because, as O will tell you, and I think I've told you guys this story before, I try not to be emotionally invested in international hockey. And I'm a very proud Canadian. Always have been, always will be. And now maybe more than ever for all the obvious, all the obvious reasons. But in 1996, the World Cup, I was so sideways and emotionally upset that Canada lost to the Americans when Brett Hull booted the puck into the net that afterwards, I worked for the Toronto Star at the time, and I was fit to be tied. And I was like, this is a stupid way to do my job. I'm too emotional. I need to be more rational. So I said, if I'm going to do international hockey, and I do a lot of it at TSN World Juniors every year, I got to back off the cheerleading and the wanting Team Canada to win and be a lot more cool and analytic. And that's exactly what I did. And to the point, 2010, I might have been the only person in the rink in Vancouver when Sidney scored the golden goal, and I was like 10 feet behind the net where he scored it as rights holders that year.
You started sending emails and writing pieces on it?
No, I just sat there. Everybody jumped up and everybody just sat there and celebrated, and I just sat in my chair and didn't do anything. And it's not because I'm not a proud Canadian. I'm happy when Canada wins for them. But you know what? I got to know a lot of Americans and international people over the year. Jimmy Johansson, the late Jimmy Johansson of USA Hockey, was just a prince of a guy. And when they won, I was happy for him. So that's kind of where I went with the cold, detached approach. But now that I'm not covering it, and now that Canada is in a trade war and who knows what else, and the total lack of disrespect our country feels because of the Donald Trump and the annexation and 51st state BS, I was like a raving lunatic watching that game last night. And in the grand scheme of things, the winner or the loss, really, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. And I can look at that part of it analytically and just say, whatever's going to happen on the trade war, whatever's going to happen on all this annexation talk and everything else, it's going to happen regardless of whether Canada won or lost last night. But I got to be honest with you. It wasn't so much about for me. It wasn't so much about celebrating the win as just getting an opportunity to avoid what would have happened if the Americans had have won.
Yes,
I don't think I could have taken it, and I think most Canadians probably feel the same way.
Bobby, the term political undertone was involved in almost every panel we did. Do you think that crossed the mind of the players before that game, or do you just think they're good Canadian boys, stick puck? Let's play hockey. We want to win the game. Like, do you think?
I think it's a mixed bag. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, let's be honest. This whole thing between Canada and the United States is even harder for those of us involved in the NHL and hockey, because it's almost like there is no Canada and USA when it comes to the NHL. It's like reciprocity, total free trade, back and forth. The whole NHL community is a community, and it's a mixed bag of Canadians, Americans, and obviously Europeans. And let's be honest, a lot of the players, a lot of the coaches, a lot of the managers, they support Trump. They're Republican or what have you. I think that's pretty well documented. And so I don't think that the Canadian team was sitting there saying, we've got to do this for the annexation. But I thought Jon Cooper was very eloquent after the game last night when he talked about the fact that the players are aware of it. And I was really happy that they addressed it as directly as he did, to make the Canadian fans know that they were aware of the political overtones of the entire thing. And it wasn't their reason for wanting to win the game. They want to win the game because it's Canada, and they haven't lost a major international competition at the senior level for who knows how long. But they were aware of it. And as I said, some of them might not give a damn about the political side of it. Some of them maybe are aware, but they certainly understand stakes on a hockey level. And I think they were well aware of the other stakes that they might not, in their own mind, have a direct connection to, but certainly they're smart enough to know how the Canadian public is feeling.
Yeah, and how the Americans, like you said, would have responded to a win last night. It would have been so over the top with Bob McKenzie. So let me offer you these two stories, or these two players. Let's say you're in the press box last night, you got to write an article, or you're going on SportsCenter, and you can talk about one of these two stories. Sidney Crosby winning again, or McDavid, finally having that moment. Which one would you choose? Which one do you think is the more compelling story?
I'm like the biggest Sid booster in the world, but last night I probably would have said McDavid. And I saw, and O and I were talking a little bit by text during the game, not much, but a little bit. And I saw O's hit on SportsCenter last night, and he nailed it. And Connor himself said it. It wasn't his greatest game. I thought he really had a tough time keeping the puck on a stick. Pucks were bouncing over his stick uncharacteristically. He just, things weren't in sync for him. But at the end of the day, he gets alone in the slot. I don't know how he got that alone. And he puts it in the back of the net and beats the best goalie in the National Hockey League with a clean shot, one-on-one, boom, in the back of the net. So that was Connor's moment. It's always going to be Connor's moment until there's other Connor moments to deal with. So I would probably go down that road. The one other thing I would say is, and I've always believed this, I know a lot of Canadians want to say, oh, we won again. We never lose. We beat them in 2010. We beat them
Hayes
this
just
year.
Said that to start the show.
I say that all the time, and I'll say it for another year.
Yeah, we beat them. We're the best. We're the best. We're the best. And I would say, fair enough. When you win, you get to claim you're the best. And when the Americans finally do get around to beating Canada, and at some point they will, they're going to say they're the best, and they're okay to say that. But I got to be honest with you. Everybody talks about how far American hockey's come, and it has. They get some brilliant players. I mean, that Slavin pair last night they were unbelievable. Yeah. Werenski's been incredible. So now they're producing an astronomically wide swath of really good players. It's going to make it difficult for any nation to beat them coming up. But you know what? In 2010, the Americans won the round robin. They lost in the gold medal game on Sidney's golden goal. And this one, they lose in the round robin, and they lose on Connor McDavid's golden goal after Binnington has to stand on his head. And I've always believed this about hockey, especially short tournament games like Olympics, World Championships, World Juniors. There's so much luck involved, it's not even funny. And to be able to draw a pronouncement and say, based on winning the Four Nations face-off last night, Canada is the dominant, superior hockey nation. If the Americans had won that game in overtime, I wouldn't say there would be a whole bunch of the Americans would say it, and there'd be a bunch of Canadians who would be a little upset about the way things have gone, and they would say, well, we're never going to catch up to them. They're beating the pants off us now. These things tend to run in cycles, and a hockey game is a random series of events. And I mean, between Auston Matthews and Brady Tkachuk, the chances they had in overtime last night, how they didn't end up in the back of the net, how Binnington got those, I have no idea. That easily could have been an American win, and nobody would be talking about, oh, we're the best. And they would be talking about we're the best, and I would say tone that down, because it's just a hockey game in a short tournament, and it goes both ways. So, I mean, if in 2010 we needed a golden goal to beat them, and in 2025, 15 years later, we needed a golden goal, I mean, have they gained that much or lost? Or have we lost that much? And the answer is no. It's two great hockey nations, and the game's better for them playing each other and best on best.
And we get to do it again next year and every 2 years from then on. So it's going to be fun to have Best on Best finally back. Bob, it's always great to catch up with you. We appreciate you doing this today.
That's awesome. And Hazy B, I just want you to know I'm going to see your former OHL team tonight, the Barrie Colts, are at the Memorial Auditorium in Kitchener. So I know what number did you wear? Because I'm sure that number's been retired by
actually now, number 4. I was probably the greatest number 4 defenseman possibly to ever play in the OHL, because Bobby Orr wore number 2, I believe, for the Giants.
That's right, he did.
I believe he wore number 2. So I could take claim to that. Yeah, well, go Colts. And Rangers.
If you want to get kicked in the nuts,
tonight,
Bobby, ask somebody from Sarnia or Barrie about Bryan Hayes, and they hated his guts so much they'll just kick you right in the pills.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself, Bob.
One final thing. We were in Lamana Bakery in Pickering, my wife and I, picking up some stuff one day, and the guy behind the counter says, we were picking up lasagna, and the guy behind the counter says to me, "Hey, Bob McKenzie," he goes, "Hey, Bryan Hayes talks about his lasagna all the time. He talks about how great it is. Do you know how good it is?" And I said, I have no idea. And he goes, I'm sure it's good, but it can't be that good. I mean, not like this. Look at how good this lasagna is. And I said, you know what? If you want me to, I'll tell him Hayes is a fraud. His lasagna is a fraud. But he obviously didn't get the joke, because he goes, I wouldn't go so far as to call his lasagna a fraud, but I just can't imagine. My wife says she can't imagine it's as good as our lasagna.
Well, awesome. I put it to the test. That's a great place. It's a brilliant bakery. But I love how he doesn't say, well, Hayes isn't a fraud. My lasagna isn't a fraud. I wouldn't go that far as to say my lasagna is a fraud. But I'll put it up against anyone, Bob. Whenever you want some, you just let me know. It's all yours, buddy.
It's crazy how many Italians you've offended over the years by saying you have good lasagna.
I am out to offend as many people as I can. That is my
Great talking to you guys, boys. I'll have a good one.
All right, Bob. There he is, Bob McKenzie. Rangers Colts on a Friday night in Kitchener. That's a great barn. Great.
It'll be to talk to Bobby about those Canada story. He's the games he's been at. He's been through Gretzky, right through all of them.
Yeah, seen it all, done it all, and the way he views it. And listen, he's right about the nature of the sport. That it's a bounce here, a bounce there, and things would be very different. Like if the Americans got a bounce in 2010, obviously that history is different if last night. But the amazing thing is they didn't, and then the guy that got the bounce was Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. And it just allows the best players, the generational players, to have their moments. And also, what I was thinking last night was, because it's been so long since we had a best on best, there is a younger generation of Canadians that have never experienced how fun it is to watch Canada win and play. Where let's say you're 20 years old, you were 10 back in 14, you wouldn't really remember that. Like, you wouldn't remember the 2014 games, or certainly not the 2010 games. So if you're 18, 20, 22, like last night was your first chance to really puff your chest out and get to witness that. So that was awesome.
And getting to see Crosby, McDavid, McKinnon together like that, I think there was always this intrigue factor as far as what's it going to look like, and it's the made-up tournament, and then you get to see it, and you're like, it's everything I thought it was going to be, man. Like, I know there's ups and downs, but you're playing against the best guys. Like, you're playing against 4 first lines. You're playing against 6 shutdown defensemen, essentially, on every team. And those guys still had flashes where you're like, that guy's dominant. And then together they're dominant. For me, like, I watched that and I said, that is the most, like, crisp, efficient, cleanest hockey that we're going to see until next year's Olympics, and it was everything that I wanted it to be, watching all those guys play together.
One thing I'll take away from the 4 games, and it's a quote from Ken Hitchcock, and it's a guy that's been around a long time. He's a Stanley Cup champion, and I think Sullivan will tell you, I think Coop will tell you, I think Craig Berube will tell you, if you can't check, you're not going to win. It's as simple as that. Like, when it comes down to a 7-game series against a big burly team like the Florida Panthers or the United States, if your skilled guys can't check, you're screwed.
Yeah, you got to go get the puck back.
Isn't that such an eye-opening thing, though? All those guys are the top dogs, the most skilled players on their team. You throw them in the middle.
And if you can't check, you're not going to win.
Throw them into that game and say, you guys are all so skilled, you actually have to check tonight, and it's going to be a defensive masterclass. Go do it.
Somebody from the New Jersey Devils is going to have to pull Jack Hughes aside and say, if you can't check Barkov over a 7-game series, we're not going to win the Stanley Cup. Or an Auston Matthews or a Nick Suzuki or whoever you want, Braden Point, Cirelli. If you can't check that guy continuously and regularly over a 7-game series, we can't win the Stanley Cup. So
if Hughes was playing for Canada, there would be a lot of talk about the tournament he had. And some of the stuff that went on, like even the game-winning goal. Like, I know he's playing out of position, but you can't go like and help in the middle of the ice. You're kind of just standing there saying, like, I got my guy, like, responsible for this. But I don't know. Like, there would be like OverDrive New Jersey would be talking about that.
Yeah,
for sure.
You focus on your own guys for sure, and yeah, that's the reality of it. You got to win your matchups, and again, to put a focus on like the Matthews versus McDavid. Matthews won his matchup for 70 minutes of the game. Actually dominated his matchup, and yet it's irrelevant because the one check you had to make, you didn't make, and McDavid scored. Mike Johnson coming up in 20 minutes. Dear Hazy V later this afternoon. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Mike Johnson in 15 minutes. Lock or no lock at 5:30. We will be welcoming players to the 2026 Canadian team at the Olympic Games. We will be doing that at 5:30.
You're going to welcome them. You were going to say their name and say, welcome to Team Canada 2026. Please go sit down.
Yeah. I'll be like Jerry at the draft, right? I'll be up there at the podium and do the shake and the bro hug and all that.
Dude,
good
you
stuff.
and Jay, I don't mind you guys goofing on me, but the people are coming up to me about the handshake, and now it's just people are coming up with the full head, and they're like, "Hey, how you?" And I'm like, "No, I don't do that with everyone now. It was a one-off, and it was a weird thing."
I thought it was hilarious. I was sitting there in my living room watching that, and I'm like, that's just such an thing to do. I thought it was awesome, and I think you should continue doing it when you're on with Jay because you're not there on the set.
But why didn't he just he could have did me a solid, man, and let it slide.
No way, man. You're the handshake guy. That's not a bad thing. I mean, you're a man among the people. You're the king of Kensington down there just shaking hands, right?
King of Kensington.
I think that's who you need to be. Cruising around, just handshaking people at random.
That could mean so many things, man, down there.
Yeah.
If you're the king of Kensington.
Oh, yeah. The king of Kensington. There's a lot of different possibilities that comes with that title. Well, you're the king of Collingwood generally. I'll be up there this weekend, 24-hour Blue Mountain. Shout out. I'm going up, my favorite event. I'll be there emceeing and doing my thing and stopping chats and handing out handshakes to people, right?
Do you want to do dinner tomorrow night? Fam dinner? I'll take your family out for dinner.
I think the plan is to do a little dinner thing. Okay, let me figure out our plan. That'd be great.
I'd like you to figure it out. You know why?
Why?
It's my birthday dinner, and I'd like your family to join me.
I would love that.
Wow.
I think that would be phenomenal. There we go. Okay, the birthday is the birthday
you know
tomorrow
what that needs?
officially.
That needs a little bit of a shake.
That's a shake.
That's a shake.
Let's shake on it.
That's a
Thanks.
shake.
I love it. We'll be shaking hands. Because we're raising money for Special Olympics Ontario. It's a great event.
I know you do that every year. It's great that you do that.
Yeah, it's an awesome one. And the Bar Down team will be there, so you can support them and fund their pursuit of how many runs they can do in 24 hours. It's a really cool event up there. So I'm looking forward to getting there. And I think there's a lot of Canadian pride. A lot of people are excited, right? You got hockey games going. You got basketball games going tonight. And how about this? Beards on their way to the Yankees. The Yankees are going to let people start growing facial hair for the first time since the 70s, I believe. So we'll touch on that as well because I just naturally go to Vladdy. I'm like, Vladdy's a guy who's got a lot of hair. He's got the beard going.
Oh, dude, they're not changing that rule for Vladdy, man. Trust me. There's been other guys that have had to shave, and you're like, what? That Johnny Damon was one of them. Remember that guy? He was an animal in Boston. He shows up. He looks like a different human being.
Totally different. And now you look what he's all about, and that was wild that he went from the 04 Sox and jumped to the Bronx.
He won a World Series in 09, too. Johnny Damon did.
Yeah, he was a great player, man. Great player.
He likes to have fun, too.
He looks like he likes to have a very good time.
Oh, my God.
Hour 2 coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.